Hey everybody, we're with Neil at the Flakpanzer Restoration Project. I'm Johan from Sabot Videos, and we're going to get a quick tour of the Hetzer. So Neil, can you show us around and tell us a bit about what you did in here?
Okay, right now I'm sitting in the commander's position as they would sit originally in the Hetzer. Over here on the left, there would be three people in a row. You would have the driver up front, of course. You would have the gunner sitting right behind him. These wrist controls for his main gun here to elevation and traverse. And behind him would be the loader. Very cramped positions, as you can see here. Not much room for those three to maneuver. The commander, of course, he'd be sitting here. He had to be observing things. He had extra optics, i.e. he would have his... Well, we're not even going to bother with it today because it's being sticky, but...
The wing nut on the back, maybe?
Yeah. All right, there we go. As you can see, right here, there is a set of SF-14s, standing for Scherenfernrohr or scissor periscope binoculars. This is that he could sit down inside. And when the time came, if he wanted to look out without having to shove his head right up there, he could elevate these, lock them into place, and he could stand up depending on how high he wanted to go and look out through the periscope binoculars and see what's up front, get a view or something, look for targets or potential enemy approach to him. As I said before, over behind you is where the driver would sit. Immediately behind him would be the gunner or aimer, and right behind him would be the loader. All three in a row on that side. Very cramped positions. This is the main gun right here. This is a PAC 39, 7.5 centimeter L48 caliber gun. This gun, even though it's a PAC 39 with the type of ammunition they were using, would destroy any Allied armor up to 1,000 or at 1,000 meters. That was its effective range. So these were known to take out Germans. There was even a notation of them taking out a Russian Joseph Stalin II tank, which was very heavily armored. But again, that was basically a good gun. And it did the job of what the Germans designed it for. Beside me here, you can see the extra shell racks where the rounds the gun would go. They'd be stacked up here. There'd be more down along the sides of the floor. They've been removed right now because we're still in the process of bringing this back up to its proper restoration level. Again, above me, the hatches, the extra hatch, so he can swing his Scherenfernrohr forward and work out of that. The other hatches for the driver and the gunner and the loader to come in as well. What's left here is the other components are pulled out and stacked up on the shelving, of course, but basically behind me in here would the engine be sitting, and it would come forward via the drive shaft into the transmission there and drive the front sprockets on it. The vehicle was developed in late 1944 in the Czech factory, the Praga factory. It was basically a compromise to use antiquated Czech tank chassis, the 38T. The tank itself was obsolete, but they were able to use various developments on it, platforms. They used the Martyr system to begin with. It was basically an open-top vehicle with a PAC 75 on it, or a captured Russian 76 millimeter with just a half-round armor wrap up top to semi-protect the crew. This is a vast advancement, whereas the whole crew is contained inside and protected, and the gun is mobile. So it's an assault gun, as it's officially known, but it's more or less a mobile anti-tank gun. Various other things around here. As you can see up here, there's a fuel system switching where they could switch the fuel tanks over different positions to feed the left tank, the right tank, or to switch over to emergency control if they've lost the fuel pump. They could use an electric pump to keep the fuel flowing. Not much else I can say except for what you can see around here.
Can you show us how to traverse and elevate the gun?
Okay, again, the gunner would be sitting here. He would have a little stool to sit on. The sight would be bolted on here and would stick up through the ceiling. outside, so that he would be, the commander would be designating targets for him. He would be looking for them, and looking into the eyepiece of his scope, he would adjust the gun. Again, by this, which is elevation, up and down, and by this, which is traverse, left and right, which is kind of sticky at the moment. We've got some more greasing to do with that. Down on the handle here, you can actually see the firing trigger. The electrics are disconnected from it, but basically, you can see the wire feed. And that would feed power, 12 volts, into his little box here. When you look at that box, you know you'd have power because there'd be a little red light, a little light inside that would illuminate a red lens here. The power would go from there over to the other side of the gun to the safety switch, and then up to the connection point where it's hooked onto the back of the gun. Panzer's ammunition was fired electrically as compared to the anti-tank guns, the towed anti-tank guns. They were percussion tap fired. So when he pulled this trigger, he was allowing 12 volts to go through here, down through the safety. Once it's set to fire, down into the base of the round, which would ignite it, and bang, off would go the projectile would go down. The gun would recoil. Again, the commander has to sit back there quite a bit because that thing could recoil right back close to him. As it fired, it was semi-automatic, i.e. as it fired and came forward again, the breech block would open, the empty casing would fly out, strike a heavy leather pad back here, and fall down into a basket. He would then, the gunner, if he needed to fire again, would grab another round. The breech block would remain open for him after that last round was fired. He'd ram a new one in, the breech would close automatically. He'd give the tap to the gunner to go ahead again, and after he had set the switch to fire, and the gunner could go ahead again, select a new target, or follow the directions of the commander as to what he wanted him to engage. Up on top here, when traveling, you don't want to drive around with the gun rattling up and down and bouncing. That's hard on the mounting bearings that the gun rides on. So, if they were not engaged in contact and they were doing a long road move, he would crank the gun up to virtually full elevation. Center it. Wrong way. And it's not going to go for us today because we're having problems here with it. But basically, you crank it over, swing the traverse lock down in place with lock on that bar, and then swing it up and lock it into place like that. And the gun would be locked into position so that as it was traversing, it wasn't bouncing and rattling and wearing on the bearings. Let's see, what else can we talk about? Right behind your head there, you'll see a funny looking can with a stencil on it marked MP43. These weapons, of course the crew might carry their own sidearms and that, but they actually had a German Sturmgewehr, or as it was known at the time, machine and pistol 43. The butt would fit into that case. So basically you'd shove it down with a muzzle down into that square piece there. You'd swing that up and lock it into place. So you'd have they would have a weapon ready for the crew if they had to get out and give themselves protection as they exited the vehicle. The vehicle was armed, in addition to this gun, had a remote-controlled MG34 on top. You can see the remains of the mount for that hanging down here. By remote control, I mean that the loader back here could sit back and look through a little periscope. He'd have a set of handles here that he could crank, and that would traverse and turn the whole mount up top that's holding the MG34, and he could look through the periscope, which was aligned with the sights in the 34, and he could engage infantry targets that were potentially side attacking them, or whatever else he needed to bring fire on with his MG34 and engage it from there. All the time staying down inside the vehicle under armor.
Right, so thanks a lot, Neil.
Okay.
See you guys around.
Mm-hmm.